Hey everyone, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture. We're looking at an animated film today from 1926. So it's probably the first full-length animated film before Snow White and such. But it's not maybe the animation that you would be expecting. It's very interesting, very well-made film, a fairy tale. It is done entirely in silhouette. So the film is made by Lotte Reiniger and her husband Carl Cook, who handled cinematography. And essentially they had to cut out all these different shapes out of, probably like a black paper, or maybe they inked it, and film them. They would make them move. So it is animated. And so you get this entire thing done in silhouette. Really amazing film, The Adventures of Prince Achmed. It did apparently about $100,000 in the box office in 1926. So, probably not too bad in those days. It took 3 years to make it. They did it at 24 frames per second. And apparently it was made, filmed in the attic above a vegetable garden of the man who financed the film, a banker from Berlin named Louis Hagen. Music in the film is by Wolfgang Zeller. He also did music for Vampire and many other films, but also, sadly, some propaganda films for, the other side during the war. This is a German film. So let's get into it. But, so it's not super complicated, but we will throw the spoiler sign up at a certain point. So let's jump into The Adventures of Prince Achmed. Again, it films 3, 2, 1. The film opens with strange shapes changing, morphing over this colored background, and they eventually form into this human figure, somewhat human-looking figure, an old bony man called the Sorcerer. He's going to be the principal bad guy of this film. Then we get sort of a roll call of the other characters that are going to be in the movie. So again, a parade of different shapes and forms. And finally, we see Dinarsade, the beautiful daughter of the Caliph, and then Prince Achmed, son of the Caliph, brother of Dinarsade. Now remember, this is a silent film, so there are no voice actors. To mention, nobody's playing these roles other than the artists who are making these shapes. One of the nice things about the silent era was the transportability of films from one country to another. You just had to change the translations of the dialogue cards, and you were good to go. Now, I show you this as an example of how the shifting shapes and colors looked. Again, the characters are done on paper. The backgrounds were done in a variety of ways. Apparently soap sometimes figured into it to give a certain gauzy look to things. Reiniger is trying to give the film a sense of wonder and fantasy, and I think she does a really good job with that. So those shapes eventually form into the background for Pari Banu, essentially a fairy queen in the story. And yeah, the kid with the lamp is in this one as well. There was a quick reference apparently to Prince Achmed in Disney's Aladdin as a reference to this film. And then we have the Witch of the Flaming Mountain. Nice touch in this shot. She scratches herself in the introduction to show that she's a bit wild and maybe uncouth. All that different for me, frankly. The story opens with the sorcerer, apparently an African sorcerer is what they say. I really love the bold colors that you get all through this thing. And we see him doing these odd movements as he's casting a spell. And then these blurred images sort of appear. And then they begin taking monstrous shapes as he dances, contorts, and gestures. And eventually, he conjures this fine horse as a gift for the Caliph. He puts on his finery and he flies on the horse to the palace of the Caliph. And check this out. We see the guards exiting the palace, the musicians parading in front. It's a big procession, very cool. And then the entrance of the Caliph with his daughter and sons. The silhouette style of animation is very reminiscent of a marionette show in the way characters move, etc. The sort of more fanciful shapes of them. They're not, they don't just look like people, maybe a little extreme, put it that way. Marionettes were still a big part of entertainment, in Europe in the 1920s and somewhat in the United States. They're probably still bigger in Europe than they are here. But at any rate, I don't think that would have been a problem for people. I think they would have just been amazed to see these shapes moving across the screen. There are some acrobats entertaining the Caliph. And finally, the sorcerer appears with his magic flying horse. He demonstrates the horse's ability to fly, while Dinarsade watches from her sedan chair. Prince Achmed is likewise amazed by this display. They watch as the sorcerer flies up to the top of the palace and grabs the Caliph's flag. He then flies it down and hands the flag to the Caliph. It actually goes through a few different people. The Caliph immediately begins tossing bags of gold to the sorcerer. He wants that horse, but the sorcerer refuses. He's not interested in gold. What does he actually want? Well, the Caliph will give him anything. He swears by the Prophet. The sorcerer then walks over and takes the hand of the beautiful Dinarsade. Now, nobody is thrilled with this. Dinarsade pulls away, cries for help, falls to her knees. And Prince Achmed responds by taking the sorcerer by the neck and pulling him away from his sister. As you can imagine, the sorcerer isn't going to take this lightly. He tricks Achmed into mounting the flying horse and activating it, and he bolts up into the heavens. The crowd goes wild. The sorcerer is then seized by the Caliph's guards. End of Act 1. Well, Act 2 begins with Achmed flying up into the sky. The Caliph orders the sorcerer to bring him back, but the sorcerer tells him that a pull on this lever near the tail brings it back to Earth. But, nothing he can do from down there. And he then asks, the Caliph asks, he goes, well, where, has the horse taken the prince? The sorcerer claims not to know. Well, the prince soars ever higher. He tries to pull back on the reins, but it has no effect. Soon he finds himself up in these storm clouds, lightning, thunder, etc. And of course, you'll note the color change. It's a very simple thing, but very effective in this film, not only in creating a new environment, but also a new mood. While Achmed up there is buffeted by the winds, it's total chaos. And soon, while the sorcerer languishes in chains in the Caliph's dungeon, Achmed is up among the stars, and finally he discovers the lever on the horse's rump, and he manages to descend. And he finally lands in the land of Whack Whack, which I guess in German would be Wack Wack, but okay, we'll just call it Whack Whack. You might see what I mean here as regards the colors. We're no longer in the storm or among the stars, but the color has not changed to what we saw in the land of the Caliph. It has remained cool and sort of dreamlike. While landing on the roof of the palace, he opens a trapdoor and he descends down the stairs. And he stumbles through a curtain and finds himself in a room full of maidens. Maybe it's sort of like a harem. He is plied with kisses and wine. In this room, it's nice work if you can get it. And being a fairy tale, one wonders if an ogre is soon to be on the scene. But also notice again here, we get the color change, this time indicating mood more than location. Well, this is the court of Peri Banu, a fairy queen. And Achmed is welcomed with open arms. So there's no ogre. Dude really kind of has hit the jackpot. The story of Achmed and Peri Banu is one of the tales of the Arabian Nights. Peris are supernatural nymphs kind of originating in Persian folklore. There's, kind of fairies, that kind of concept. At any rate, the party gets a little bit raucous. Achmed ends up fleeing up the stairs back to his flying horse. He takes off for the skies. The Peris are calling him back, and he flies to a magic lake. Very beautiful, very peaceful. He sees two Peris descending, kind of in the form of birds. So he hides. And then he sees that they are joined by a third, who is Peri Banu, the fairy queen. Well, he spies on them bathing and naturally falls instantly in love with Peri Banu. because fairy tales and human nature demand this. And while they are bathing, he steals the sort of feathered cloak that they use to take the kind of bird form, and he hides them. But when the other fairies return, they discover the theft and call Peri Banu, and when she arrives, Achmed emerges from the greenery, holding the wings. The two fairy attendants flee, because good help is hard to find in the fairy realm. She flees as well on land, and is chased. She asks for her feathers back, and he says he left them back where they started, so the chase continues. Finally, she faints, and he carries her and the feathers back to his horse. They leap into the sky and away from the fairyland of Whack Whack, all the way to China. So I think we might have started maybe in Egypt, maybe in Istanbul. I'm not sure what they were going for there. Flew to Persia, which is probably near where Whack Whack is, and now we are in China. And this necessitates another color change. Again, I love the way they use this color also to provide depth, of those mountains. It creates a really nice 3D effect. Well, here, resting in the shade of a tree, Achmed tries his hand at courtship. He swears eternal love to her. She says, look, if we are wed, we can never return to Whack Whack on pain of death. And he says that Allah's mercy will protect them if they are wed. Meanwhile, the sorcerer searches for his magic horse, scrying their location with his spells, even while he's chained up in the dungeon, and knowing where they are. He transforms into a bat, and he flies away. Achmed is still courting Peri Banu, promising that they will find a new home, and she will forget all about Whack Whack. But she falls to weeping, and his heart touched, he returns her feathers. And with that act of love, Achmed wins her heart, and she says that she will follow him. But while they kiss, the sorcerer arrives, transforms into, I think, a kangaroo, and steals away with Peri Banu's feathers. Now Achmed chases him until he falls into this crevasse, and so trapped, the sorcerer hops back to Peri Banu. Well, reassuming human form, he claims that he has been sent by Prince Achmed to make a gift to her of this robe. And Achmed, meanwhile, has a random encounter with a giant snake and battles it fiercely. Every hero needs a dragon to battle. At the moment, this is Achmed's. Well, during the battle, it wraps its tail around a tree atop the crevasse. When it dies, this allows Achmed to climb out. But by the time he gets back, the sorcerer has kidnapped Peri Banu and flown away with her on the magic horse. End of Act 2. Act 3, Adventure in China. We meet first the Emperor of China sitting in his court. It is here that the sorcerer has brought Peri Banu. He sells her to the emperor for several bags of gold. The sorcerer then flies back on the magic horse and turns the gold into strange demonic birds, which he sends to attack Achmed. The whole lot of them leap on Achmed while he mourns the loss of Peri Banu, and they fly him away. At the same time, Peri Banu is being courted by the emperor. She rejects his advances. He casts her aside, telling his hunchbacked son to kill her or take her for his wife. Now I know which one I would choose. Achmed, meanwhile, is flown to a volcano. He is set atop it. The birds changed into a boulder to hold him down. And the sorcerer tells him he is now going to go and get his sister. But evil does tend to undo itself, for in these mountains lives the sorcerer's worst enemy, the Witch of the Fire Mountain. She gets word of what has transpired and decides to get involved. Witches always like to mix things up. Design-wise, the witch is something like an ogress. We D&D nerds would maybe call her an ogre magi. But she sends her demons out to look for Achmed, and they soon return with him. She asks how he came to her mountain, and he tells her it was the African sorcerer. And she flies into a range attacking him. But he fights her off, and she begs mercy and tells him that the sorcerer is her greatest enemy. And now, Achmed is going to be her dearest friend, because it turns out they're both opposing the sorcerer. Achmed begs the witch to help him rescue Peri Banu. She agrees. She summons up magic armor and weapons. So equipped, Achmed and the witch leap into the sky, and she walks the winds to the emperor's palace. The wedding is in full swing, the emperor tying the bond between his son and Peri Banu while she weeps. Down come Achmed and the witch into the wedding procession, while Peri Banu struggles with her handmaidens in the honeymoon cottage. Achmed and the witch descend, toss the son to the side, and Achmed enters, sends the maidens away. And Achmed and Peri Banu kiss. It is true love. But the demons of Wak-Wak are out searching for their mistress. They arrive and tear open the honeymoon cottage and attack Achmed. He battles them, but they steal away Peri Banu. Very John Carter of Mars in this story, just when he gets the princess, something else happens. Take her away. Well, he captures one of the demons and forces it to fly him to Wak-Wak. And it does, but it drops him on a mountain before the Tor of Wak-Wak. In other words, the gate into the place, which only opens to those who use the magic lamp of Aladdin. Well, Prince Achmed accepts this quest. End of Act 3. Act 4 is Aladdin and the magic lamp. So, having accepted the quest, Achmed turns around and sees this demonic-looking elephant beast attacking a poor traveler. Achmed lets fly an arrow and kills the beast with one shot. Wouldn't you know it? It's Aladdin. He was the one being attacked. Achmed inquires about the magic lamp, but Aladdin doesn't have it anymore. This results in either sorrow or a facepalm. It's tough to tell in silhouette. Well, Aladdin does have a tale to tell. He recounts the tale of the lamp and the genie that we all know pretty well by now. Of course, it involves him being in love with the caliph's daughter from afar, Dinarsade, you remember, and also Achmed's sister. He is then, visited by this old man who takes him to retrieve the lamp. I thought this graphic was really, really interesting. And there's this nice sequence of him climbing down into the well and into the caverns of the magic lamp. Very evocative stuff. You notice the color change as well. The sequence actually brought to my mind the dungeon map that's in the D&D basic set that's done in silhouette, kind of from the side rather than the top-down ones. Fellow D&D geeks will probably know what I'm talking about. Well, when he climbs out, he is pushed back by the old man, who is, of course, the African sorcerer, and he ends up alone in the dark cave until he lights the lamp. The genie appears. Really great animation on the genie. And Aladdin, he takes Aladdin back to his home. And of course, Aladdin wants him to help him win the hand of Dinarsade. And so with a grand treasure and this magnificent palace, it works. He does win her hand. Dinarsade becomes his bride. We have to assume all of this is happening while Achmed was away. Time can be a little funny in a fairy tale, but apparently there was enough time for all this. With the news, Achmed tells Aladdin who he actually is and that they are actually now brothers-in-law. Well, Aladdin continues that one day, everything, palace, princess, and lamp, all disappeared. Aladdin was nearly executed by the caliph, but he escaped, and now here he is on the border of Wak-Wak. And it is now that the witch of the Fire Mountain appears. She has news. The demons of Wak-Wak want to kill Peri Banu because she followed Achmed. Aladdin tells her that the sorcerer has the magic lamp and only that can get them into Wak-Wak and through this gate. He and Achmed ask her to kill the sorcerer and then promise her that after they get in, the lamp will be hers. And she agrees to give it a try. So she does this crazy magic dance. David Bowie has nothing on the witch. And finally, the sorcerer is summoned and we get a magic battle of each taking different shapes. The sorcerer becomes a lion, the witch a serpent. If you've seen The Sword and the Stone from Disney, you kind of get the idea of this. It rages back and forth, and then they take their own shapes again and start hurling fire at one another, and it finally ends with the death of the sorcerer. The enemy of all three is now no more. Aladdin gets back the magic lamp, and he gives it to the witch as promised. So we get a major theme here of fairy tales, the way evils are revisited upon evildoers. In addition, the monstrous-looking witch turns out to be a true and loyal friend. End of Act 4. Act 5, the title of which translates as The Ghost Slaughter in Whack Whack. Dude, that is metal. The demons have seized Peri Banu. She is in their power. They mean to toss her off a cliff. But before they can do this, one of their number appears and tells them that Prince Achmed is coming. And he's bringing an ass-kicking with him. Basically, we got the fighter, the thief, and the magic user are here. Let's roll for initiative. Well, he demands they return Peri Banu. And one of the demons begins to throw her from the cliff, so Achmed shoots him with an arrow. He then calls on Aladdin to release the spirit of the lamp. And you get some really, really nice special effects here with those lights as they move in the sky. While that's happening, Achmed is in full battle with the demons. Remember, he has magic armor and weapons, very Paladin and Hell vibe in this sequence. But during the battle, the demons steal the lamp from Aladdin. They dance and cavort in victory, but the witch now leaps into battle and, seizing the lamp from the demon, summons an army of spirits from the lamp. It's demons versus ghosts in a battle royale. And in the midst of the battle, the demon king seizes Peri Banu and flees down the mountain. Aladdin and Achmed give chase, and finally, at the bottom, Achmed battles the mighty demon for his beloved. He cuts off the heads of the demon, but they regrow until the witch leaps in. She presses the magic lamp against the stumps to stop the regeneration, and eventually, our heroes are triumphant. Achmed and Peri Banu are reunited. The demons flee back into hell. It's Miller time. And lo, the palace of Aladdin approaches. It floats in on a cloud and lands. Our heroes bid farewell to the witch, an awesome character, in my opinion. The three then enter Aladdin's lost palace, and it flies off for wherever the Caliph was located. I love this shot of them waving to the witch through the haze of distance. Very heroic pose she has here. But again, the special effects, the animation is kind of simple. It has to be with silhouettes and just solid colors. But there's really a lot more depth to it than you might imagine, if you just heard that described to you. Well, Aladdin rushes into the palace looking for his love, Dinarsaid, and finds her, and soon they are all reunited, husbands and wives, the brother and the sister, as the towers of the Caliph's city appear in the distance. Once they land, Dinarsaid and Achmed are reunited with their grieving father, the Caliph. He is introduced to his new daughter, Peri Banu. Aladdin is reconciled with the Caliph, and they all live happily ever after, as you should do in any good fairy tale. Well, folks, it's a relatively short film, about an hour and 6 minutes, although, again, it took 3 years for them to make this. It is, in my opinion, an artistic triumph, both in terms of the technical aspects. They had to figure out how to do the camera and make that work. The different special effects that they managed to generate, and just imagine all these paper cutouts that they had to create, which obviously I'm assuming are in pieces so that they can make them move. But it's a really amazing effect. But also, it's a really wonderful little fairy tale. If you have kids, an hour's not super long. Especially if they're artistic sort of kids. They like making things, with their hands. This might really fire their imagination. You might end up having to buy some, colored construction paper and black construction paper. I can imagine kids wanting to try to make something like this themselves. But also for adults, it's got that wonder of a fantasy film. It has that just kind of gets you. And it's really, really beautifully done. Highly suggest you check out The Adventures of Prince Achmed from 1926. It gives a big thumbs up from me. You can find it. It's in the public domain at this point. You can find it on YouTube in a few different versions. The one I watched had German, not subtitles, but the German dialogue cards, which every once in a while I'd use Google Translate to figure out what they actually said to make sure I was getting things right. But the first time I saw it on TV, obviously it used English. You could, I'm sure, find some that are translated already. But check it out, man. If you love animation, if you love fairy tales, if you're an artist and you want to see the use of color and how they did this, give it a look. I think you're going to be really amazed by what they managed to create. Let me know in the comments what you think of this movie, if you've seen it, or if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them there. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend. We do all sorts of pop culture reviews on this channel. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. And I will see you again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.